Mark says there's a wolf man around the corner. Which sounds like a fairly scary prospect, but anyway, we've walked around that corner together, and here we go with Wolfman.
Yes, this is the new incarnation of the iconic Universal monster. The project was first announced a decade ago, and as part of the inverted commas dark universe, which then fell flat on its face when they made The Mummy, which, if you remember when we reviewed it, I said should have been just called Tom Cruise movie. It wasn't the thing. Anyway, so this is produced by the ubiquitous Jason Blum, directed by Lee Whannell, so Saw and Insidious fame. Blum and Whannell had some success in their reboot of The Invisible Man. Then they ended up taking over the reboot of Wolfman. At various points, Ryan Gosling, Derek Cianfrance were attached, but then it didn't happen. So now, Christopher Abbott is Blake, who's a family man who, as a boy, heard weird sounds in the woods near his rural home, and whose dad disappeared into those woods, missing, presumed dead. Now, his father's estate is finally being passed on. He's inherited his childhood home on a whim. Well, he tells his wife and daughter, played by Julia Garner, brilliant, and Matilda Firth, that it will do them all some good to go and stay in the house. The rural house where, as a kid, he heard scary noises in the woods, from which his father disappeared, which has been empty for umpteen years. And, good idea. So that's what they do. They pack a truck, they head off into the outback, stopping en route to, get directions from the locals. But then, as they're driving there, something or someone steps out into the road. There's an accident. Injuries are incurred. The next thing, they're holed up in this terrifying old house in the middle of nowhere with, at first, no electricity, no phones, just a CB radio, and no idea of why nice, passive dad has suddenly started to develop wolfy teeth. He's not himself. He can't talk. And the film's called Wolfman. So, look, on paper, there is an interesting idea here, which is, let's do it as a sort of metamorphosis style update. In the same way that, when David Cronenberg did The Fly, it was, okay, let's have Jeff Goldblum's body falling apart and him turning into a fly. And apparently, the director screened Michael Haneke's Amour as a tonal touchstone at the beginning, because that idea about it's playing out in a fixed location, and it's a life and death drama, and it's intimate rather than spacious. Also, great cast. I mean, Julia Garner was brilliant in The Assistant, was absolutely brilliant in Ozark, and is fantastic. Also great composer Benjamin Wallfish, who produces a properly unsettling, growly score. Also some decently scrungy transformation effects. Although, of course, if you're my age, you go, well, yes, it's not like Rick Baker on American Werewolf in London or Rob Bottin, who took over from Rick Baker on The Howling, but there is actually this one shot that is very, very specifically American Werewolf. So lots of promise. The thing is, I think lots of promise, but sadly little bite. I mean, the whole thing plays out in a very compressed time frame. Unlike The Fly plays out over like a long period. And so Jeff Goldblum's disintegration from man to fly happens really gradually. In this case, it's like 1 minute everyone is a townie, and the next minute they're all just dealing with wolfman-y stuff, and they kind of get used to it much too fast. And whereas in The Fly, you had Gina Davis being like genuinely aghast at what was happening to her boyfriend, in this has a mum and daughter showing, comparatively little shock when their nearest and dearest starts turning into a wolf. Watching it, do you remember when we were at Radio 1 and Jack Nicholson starred in Wolf, the Mike Nichols film? Mm-hmm. And the biggest problem with that film was it was sort of a slightly serious take on the wolf transformation. Everyone said, oh yeah, well, Jack Nicholson, he's a wolf, isn't he? But the way in which they dramatized the wolfiness of the Nicholson character was he did a lot of trampolining. There was a lot of off-camera trampolines. So he would jump, he'd run along and then he'd jump, and it'd be like a trampoline thing. And the problem with this is that I think its heart's in the right place, but it at times it's silly. And it's a bit dull. There's the scariest moment. In fact, the one moment that made me jump is the moment when the somebody or something steps out in front of the car just before the car crash. But otherwise, it's, what's the phrase? It's a bit of it's a bit of a sheep in wolf's clothing. It's like it's not got enough bite to function as a horror film. It's not got enough depth to function as a sort of companion piece to The Fly, and it doesn't have the humor of American Werewolf. It doesn't have the sort of the shock factor of Howling. It's just a bit dull.